These actors all turned up, put in the work, and categorically understood the assignment. No matter how thankless their job might have been, they came to set prepared and in turn gave a performance that was basically the single standout element of these terrible recent films. So I'm Gareth, this is What Culture, and here are 10 actors who gave great performances in terrible recent movies. Number 10, Russell Crowe, The Pope's Exorcist. Though it actually wasn't the worst movie about exorcism released in 2023, we'll get to that later, The Pope's Exorcist was nevertheless an agonizingly unambitious by-the-numbers possession flick, made memorable only by Russell Crowe's wonderfully idiosyncratic central performance. As meme-worthy scooter-riding exorcist Father Gabriele Amorth, Crowe is clearly having an absolute blast, rocking an honestly pretty good Italian accent, and elevating the entire enterprise through his sheer charismatic thrall. Crowe basically committed harder to this blatant paycheck role than anyone could have reasonably anticipated, and the result is a film that would have been forgotten in a week without his bizarrely dedicated effort. Instead, it's become something of a guilty pleasure among horror fans over the past few months. You know it's not good, and often it's actually genuinely quite awful. And yet, Crowe's performance has an infectiously entertaining quality to it that can't help but bleed into the rest of the movie. A sequel has already been confirmed, and so as long as Crowe returns with the exact same aura, it'll honestly be tough to resist taking a punt. What's your favourite guilty pleasure film out there? Is it The Pope's Exorcist or something else? You let me know in the comment section down below. Number 9, Molina Coto, My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3. My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3 was an utter slot bucket comedy sequel released this past summer. A film cynically curled out with all the perfunctoriness of somebody filling out a tax return at the last minute. Nobody looks like they actually wanted to be in front of the camera in this movie, with one notable exception, actress Molina Coto, who portrays Victory, the non-binary mayor of the Greek town of Risi, which Tula and company descend upon. Amid a disinterested ensemble cast and lifeless script, it's Cotolou's vibrant, energetic performance which proves to be the single charming, funny part of the entire film. She's the only performer who seemed to understand the assignment, or in the very least attempted to produce something entertaining from admittedly atrocious material. It's all the more impressive given that this is Cotolou's first ever role in a feature film, and yet she utterly outclassed a huge cast of veteran actors. Hopefully this won't be the last we see of her on screen. Number 8, Joel Kinnaman, Silent Night. Silent Night should have been a major cause for celebration, given that it marked John Woo's first US action flick in almost 20 years, and touted the intriguing gimmick of its vengeful protagonist Brian Godlock being rendered mute after his vocal cords are damaged in a shooting. However, it's dreadfully dull stuff, with the decision to have the entire story unfold wordlessly ultimately proving to be more of a hindrance than anything. It doesn't make sense that none of the characters speak because Brian is unable to, and even beyond the generico thriller plot, the action is a huge letdown compared to Woo's prior work in the genre. But Joel Kinnaman certainly gives an A for effort as Godlock, giving a convincing performance as an incredibly angry man seeking to avenge his son's murder in a gang shooting. Given that Kinnaman has to sell his character's entire arc through facial expressions and bodily physicality alone, it's certainly a challenging role, and one he basically nails, no matter how tepid the movie surrounding him is. Number 7, Emily Blunt, Pain Hustlers. Netflix's Pain Hustlers so clearly wanted to be the Wolf of Wall Street or the Big Short for the opioid epidemic. With its jarring tonal shifts and blandly anonymous direction from David Yates, there's depressingly little meat on these bones, which for such an important hot-button subject matter is majorly disappointing. And while Chris Evans' performance as farmer sales rep Pete Brenner drowns amid the mediocrity of, well, almost everything, Emily Blunt's turn as Pete's new colleague Liza Drake is just likeable and charismatic enough to actually be memorable. I know, what a feat. Blunt manages to energize the film in even its weakest moments, enough that with a much stronger script and more creative direction, she could have certainly ended up in the awards conversation for this as well as Oppenheimer. But given that Pain Hustlers is sub-mediocre mulch otherwise, she has to settle for being the single standout element of an otherwise torturously beige drama. Number 6, Taissa Farmiga, The Nun 2. Of all the films released last year, The Nun 2 is most certainly, one of them? A sleeping aid in movie form. packed to the gills with expository dialogue, mouldy scares, and almost nothing of interest whatsoever. Much like her older sister and fellow Conjuring-verse alum Vera, however, Taissa Farmiga hasn't given a phoned-in performance in her entire career, and she sure didn't start here. Returning in the role of Sister Irene, Farmiga once again brings a certain gravitas to the film that it doesn't really deserve. While her dramatic performance is admittedly at odds with how impossible to take seriously The Nun 2 actually is, Farmiga nevertheless escapes with her dignity intact by giving 110%, just as she did in the first film. One can only hope that if a third Nun film ever gets made, and given this one's box office grosses it assuredly will, the rest of the production rises to Farmiga's level. Don't count on it though. Thanks for checking out this video today, and if you want more of this sort of what culture joy, then hit that subscribe button down below. Number 5. Juan Pablo Rabern, Freelance. Don't feel bad if you haven't even heard of Freelance. This John Cena, Alison Brie action comedy vehicle came and went near the end of last year in the blink of a damn eye. And it's just as well, because from its lame brain penned by ChatGPT script to the sleepwalking performances from Cena and Brie, who share a shocking lack of chemistry, there's absolutely nothing here to latch onto. Well, almost. The single bright spark is the lesser known of the film's 3 main actors, Juan Pablo Rabern, who plays Juan Venegas, the president of the movie's fictional nation of Paldonia. Rabern gives such an overwhelmingly charismatic performance that you might even temporarily forget he's playing a damn dictator. The guy runs rings around a checked-out Cena and Brie, and is basically the single reason that Freelance isn't a genuine 1-star train wreck. If there's any justice in the world, he'll soon end up in some comedy vehicles more deserving of his clearly well-honed chops. Number 4. Lydia Jewett and Olivia ONeal, The Exorcist Believer. Lydia Jewett and Olivia ONeal, who portray possessed girls Angela and Catherine in The Exorcist Believer, had the absolutely thankless task of trying to live up to the legacy of Linda Blair's iconic Oscar-nominated performance from the original 1973 film. It certainly didn't help that David Gordon Green's film doesn't have much interesting for them or anyone else to do, and ends up leaning far too heavily on the esteem of William Friedkin's original masterpiece. But credit where credit's due, Jewett and ONeal somehow managed to surface above the garbage writing and give persuasive dramatic performances far more involving than anything else on offer here. As 2 terrified young girls targeted by a demon, they're absolutely believable. And when it comes to the possession sequences, they go hard where the physicality and visceral nature of their performances are concerned. It's just a shame that their fine work is largely wasted on such a cynical slice of genre dreck. Number 3. Toni Collette, Mafia Mama. Mafia Mama is clearly one of those great idea, terrible execution movies, because a story centered around a suburban American woman who literally inherits the Italian mob from her grandfather has all the potential to deliver an uproarious screwball comedy. But this is ultimately a broad-to-a-fault crime comedy, which goes for the easy, lazy joke every single time, while the flashes of brutal violence clash harshly with its overall frothy silliness. Star Toni Collette at least appreciated the campiness of the material though, and is clearly having a whale of a time playing a fish out of water. A soccer mom suddenly thrust into Italy's criminal underworld, yet the material is so far beneath her it hurts. And bar some fun chemistry with Monica Bellucci, her fine work is constantly fighting against the thunderous lack of ambition present in the script. At least she got paid to spend a few weeks wearing awesome outfits in sunny Rome while shooting this thing, right? That's something. Number 2. Jason Momoa, Fast 10. Take a bow, Jason Momoa, for basically single-handedly making the worst Fast and the Furious film a mostly tolerable sit. Momoa gleefully devours the scenery as Fast 10's vengeful Joker-esque villain Dante Reyes, giving a performance of such energy and personality that it couldn't be more diametrically opposed to Vin Diesel's charisma-vacuuming protagonist Dominic Toretto. Whether Momoa's painting the toenails of slain men, or introducing himself to Dom as Dante Ashante, he's acting in a totally different movie to everybody else slumming it in this thing, and a far more enjoyable one, just to be clear. For all of Fast 10's leaden action, risible dialogue, and ropey plot twists, Momoa puts the whole ass movie on his gigantic shoulders and carries it all the way to the finish line. The only upside of this movie ending on a hilariously abrupt, widely mocked cliffhanger, we know that Momoa's gonna return to mug it once more in Fast 11. And number 1, Sarah Snook, Run Rabbit Run. Run Rabbit Run sells itself near instantly on the fact it's a psychological horror film starring Succession's brilliant Sarah Snook, because how could that not be a recipe for success? But there's a reason this thing unceremoniously premiered at last year's Sundance before being quietly dumped on Netflix. Snook plays Sarah, a fertility doctor forced to reckon with her young daughter's increasingly unsettling behavior. And even if he can forgive how patently unoriginal the concept is, it's a disappointing bore punctuated by one of the most predictable third act rug pulls of the last year. Yet Snook's frazzled performance is so damn fantastic that it almost nudges this mess into worth a watch while scrolling on your phone anytime she's not on screen territory. But still, not quite. Snook gives herself over to this movie like her life depends on delivering an Oscar-worthy performance. And as compelling as it is to watch her protagonist mentally spiral, the snoozy pacing and predictability of the narrative make it a chore to get through, even at just 100 minutes. Put simply, even though Snook is incredible, it might be worth giving this one a miss.